What up? What up? Take two. So nice. We had to do it twice. Welcome to the Mutant XPerience, episode 28, with once again my special guest, Supercuts Godfather, SoCal legend, Marvel 2 aficionado, and just all sorts of superlatives I could probably use. I got Joe Zaza on the podcast again. For those of you who tuned in last Friday, you'll know that we had attempted to start this podcast, but unfortunately a family emergency came up, and I had to cut the stream short. But I know many of you have been eagerly awaiting and anticipating this podcast. And so I didn't want to, disappoint any of you. And so we're here on a Wednesday. Joe Zaza was kind enough to lend one of his valuable weekdays to do this podcast. And so we're here, man. We're here. So how you going? How you doing, man? How you feeling?
I'm feeling okay.
Yeah.
I want to say outstanding. I've been kind of down in the dumps physically lately, but I'm here. I'm awake.
Well, I hope whatever you're dealing with, man, you beat it, dude. Totally. Yes, Katie Alpha.
Thank
It's
you.
the run back. Yeah. So again, I don't want to spend too much time recapping what we talked about on the last show, Joe, but
Yeah, it was
just
a lot.
just kind of bring everyone up to speed. Basically Joe Zaza's an army brat, right? Moved around, Air Force brat specifically. Moved around a lot of times. One of the more interesting things that I remember from our conversation is that you spent a good bulk of your childhood in a war-torn country.
Yeah, El Salvador.
El Salvador. And we also talked a little bit about just how much of an impact your older brother had on you and on your life.
Dosrick.
Dosrick, and specifically, he was basically your kind of gateway to the FGC, right? I mean, he was basically the one that introduced you to this whole world,
Definitely.
And I think that's kind of where we left off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So unfortunately, you had told us to, that your older brother, had some illnesses, had some health problems. More specifically, he had a rare disease.
Right.
That sort of inhibited his eyesight, among other things. And so, so basically, how did when did you start to notice kind of that your participation in the FGC stuff was increasing more and more, and how were you able to deal with that? The fact that you had your older brother who was sick. How did that must have been kind of awkward for you.
It was. That's pretty insightful. Well, I didn't start participating in the FGC until 1998. He was there since the beginning.
Yeah.
He was there since 95. And he predated it basically by struggling to collect information in the years before 95. So from 91 to 95, like I said, he was using whatever service he could find. Like he was using Prodigy, CompuServe, AOL. And when he got on the news groups, which were on Usenet, which is specifically it was Alt Games SF2, and he was posting and sharing with whoever would exchange information on there. There are a lot of people, a lot of players in the FGC back then who would disinform. It's been around since the beginning. They would lie and say, hey, you can do this, to try and seed bad information to an opponent so that they could flip it on them in a tournament, even back in the Usenet days. And my brother, he was always like a moderator online. Like he was always trying to champion the internet as far as disinformation goes. So he was a Wikipedia moderator, which was another thankless job, but he did it just to make sure that nobody put bad information out there. And his motto was, if you disagree, you're wrong. Because he had kind of like a Mr. Wizard, Joey Cuellar's mentality. Like if somebody lies online, then fucking boot them. Which, that kind of wizard power back in the day. Those people that had administrative powers, they were called wizards. Those kind of people, it's a polarizing figure. You know, you either love them or you hate them, depending on your perspective of what they're moderating. But he was like that on the Usenet groups, from what I understood. Back then, I thought he was a nerd for doing it, so I didn't understand it back then. But in retrospect, I saw what he was doing, and when I jumped on, I was just as nerdy as any scrub can be. You know, I was just acting like a fool, and of course, I got panned by everybody, and they treated me like Joe Zaza's Dosric's kid brother. And I kind of had that. I felt that kind of reception from the OGs from the beginning, like I was a junior figure to my older brother. But when they saw us, when I finally started taking Rick out to core FGC events, they saw how small he was, and they saw how big I was. His disease, one of the things that also inhibited was his growth. So I was a lot taller than him, and I kind of spoke for him. You know, when he spoke online, he was just as authoritative as anyone could be. But when he was in person, you know, he was a little shy, and so we would kind of speak through each other. You know, we were like a unit, I guess. Joe Zaza and Dosric at FGC stuff, but we didn't go to core FGC events initially. In 1998, when I jumped online, and the reason I jumped online was because we started walking around the local things. Moreno Valley, the city I come from, was an arcade town. There was an arcade within walking distance everywhere. And where we lived, we had moved to in northern Moreno Valley in 1998. The closest arcade was a Brunswick bowling alley, which was probably 3 blocks away. And so we walked to Brunswick every day, and we were playing, most of the time we were playing Marvel vs. Capcom 1.
Mm-hmm.
1998, I swear up and down, they had a Third Strike in 1998. I know it came out in 1999, but I remember it being there really early. And I know back then they didn't have E3. They had some kind of expo, a different kind of thing for operators to buy machines, and Brunswick always got the stuff really, really early. So
yeah.
We saw an Alpha 3 that was in beta. We saw Third Strike there really early. We saw, I think, EX, like there was like EX2 plus Alpha or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were walking there, we started getting to know the Moreno Valley players. And one of them, his handle was Moval, Mike Ortiz. And there was also Fuson 909, which is Christian Garrido. And they in particular, they're the ones that lit the fire under my ass about the FGC, because they went to Golfland. They were driving early in their teenage years, earlier than we were. You know, I was 17 or 18 in 1998. And they were driving all the way down to OC to go to Southern Hills Golfland. And they couldn't accept either losing to us or even pressure. Like there's those kinds of players, you know, that if you pressure them, they get mad. It doesn't even matter if you lose. Just the fact that you took them to clutch or you took them to the bottom of mid in the round,
Mm-hmm.
they don't want it. They don't want to deal with it. And so they couldn't believe it. They didn't like us for some reason. And Moval in particular, Mike Ortiz, was just talking like direct shit to our faces. And Christian, on the other hand, who I love, Christian's my homie to this day. Christian, he was jumping on Usenet on Alt Games SF2 and going like, I can't believe these scrubs. And he was talking about Dosric and Joe Zaza. And I was like, who the fuck is that? I didn't know. I didn't put a face to the name or his handle, you know? And eventually we found out. They kind of hid it from us. Back then, that was something that happened too. You know, people would hide. They would, I'm sorry, but people still do that. But back then, you know, the distance between reading a post and then meeting somebody was a lot shorter in my mind, you know? Like nowadays, you really have to break down a few walls to meet somebody in person if you're really that interested in playing Street Fighter with them offline, you know? But back then, it seemed a little easier, but people really, I guess the best word now is catfish, you know? They would catfish and, you know, give a fake name. And then when you met them, they would lie about who they were online, you know? And so it took a while for him to finally admit who he was. But Christian eventually started coming on the track of being cool with me, but Moval, he was just like, nah, y'all scrubs for life. I guess because he started going to Golfland early, and I think as far as mentorship, like the lineage of mentorship goes, it was Watts trained Valle trained Christian and Moval. You know, so I guess Moval really, you know, made him go, you know what? If I'm being trained by Alex Valle, I can't be losing to these local scrubs. So, yeah, and part of the process there was he was online, both online and telling us to our face. I'll give him that. He never misrepresented himself offline. Christian, he was trolling us, but Mike, he just told us straight up to our faces, like, fuck you. And I like that about him, to be honest. But he told us, you guys ain't shit until I see you at Golfland and I see you doing anything at Southern Hills Golfland, right? And so since he put the bar up there for us, I was talking to my brother, you know, we would walk back and forth to Brunswick, so we had a lot of time talking, and I was, what the fuck is he talking about? Oh, Southern Hills Golfland, that's where all the guys play. I'm like, what the hell is that? And so he showed us. Back then we had MapQuest, not Google Maps. And I was like, damn, that's far. I don't know if we can. I didn't drive, you know, that was like 45-minute drive, which might as well have been on the other side of the world to me back then. We were walking,
Yeah, right.
you know, and he was dissing us for that. I used that too. He was like, I can't believe these scrubs walk and take the bus places. Man, he was just coming after us. And, eventually, I think in 99 or 2000, we made our way down to Southern Hills Golfland, and we did really good. My brother and I were walking around the arcade playing this game, that game, and we did really good. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, why is this guy putting the bar so high up here for when we're legit, you know? So it really disenchanted me. And that was my first experience with the FGC, climbing on Usenet, getting dissed, and then kind of redeeming myself and realizing, okay, the real issue here is that, well, back then we didn't call it salt, you know? The real issue here is that people don't like to lose. People don't like to lose or be pressured. And there was a lot of that, I don't know, I've never actually coined this term, but I'm looking for it. It's like, there's no logic in Street Fighter, right? If you can beat one guy and that guy can beat another guy, it's not a necessary conditional argument that you could beat the guy he can beat. You know, there's some people that just have your number, even though you might be able to beat a guy who can beat him. You know what I mean? There's no logic to it, right? So, man, I lost myself. That was a tangent. No, it's all good. So when I realized that was just the issue, you know, he just doesn't like losing, I said, what I need to do, so Moval, you have Moval to thank for this part of my spirit. He inspired me, like literally. I said, I'm not going to give in to this whole go where the good players are thing. Because a lot of players are born and raised in the FGC with, I don't want to play scrubs. I only want to play good players, you know, because that's the only way I'm going to level up. To an extent, that's true. To another extent, you know, completely false. Completely false. My brother and I just, I know that my ability in fighting games since 1991 was sparked simply by having a sparring buddy, which was my brother, you know, and just grinding against, you know, that sounds funny, but grinding with a sparring buddy, just over and over and over again, really just ups your skill. And then when you introduce yourself into a general population, like a community, it's funny how things play out. Just like anybody who is slated to do really well in a tournament, and then he plays one of his local friends. His local friend wipes him out, but then his local friend gets wiped out because his local friend knows exactly how to play against him, but he doesn't know how to play against top players.
Mhm.
That kind of shit happens in major tournaments all the time. Well, that started to happen with me. I basically I started going to local arcades really like frequently. So I went to universities. I went to Cal State San Bernardino Student Union, UCR Student Union. I went to Cal Poly Pomona, RCC, the Tiger's Den. That's Riverside Community College. Then I also went to the private arcades like Tilt at the Galleria in Riverside, Timeout in Moreno Valley, Gladys Games in Highland and E in San Bernardino. I started going to local stuff. I made a point of it. I said, why drive all the way to Golfland? And Shoryuken.com around that time came out. Everyone on the Usenet boards, the news group, Alt Games SF2, first there was a pre-stage migration before they migrated to Shoryuken.com. There was another image board that existed just before Shoryuken.com called MIGS, M-I-G-S, MIGS message board. And he had cool little avatars. You could pick an avatar from any game and just post. And it was a good forum, but it only lasted for a couple of months before Shoryuken just blew everything out of the water. And I was kind of late to Shoryuken. Like, I didn't find out about Shoryuken until a couple of months after it came out. So I think my account was registered April 2001. But I don't know if the boards are up still or not. But every time I went back to the boards, I was like, damn, April 2001. I'm like, how long is that ago, But when we migrated to Shoryuken, they had a specific forum for regional matchmaking. That's what it was called, regional matchmaking. And we were PAC South, Pacific South. And I started a thread called the UCR thread. And I was basically calling out to all the players in the local area and asking them, what should we call ourselves? We should have a name for ourselves. And I threw out a couple of names that I thought were stupid. And one of them stuck. Everyone said, yeah, that's the one. It was Team Riverside County. So Team Rico, And that stuck. And in Southern California at that time, there was emerging a lot of regional groups. So one of them was Random United Nutsacks out of West LA. That was Combo Fiends group. And you had Devil X, Corn Nuts, Chaotic Blue, Dash, then NSJ. And to this day, the people in NSJ who are from like the Pomona Diamond Bar area, they won't acknowledge what NSJ stands for. I think the only time they said anything as a joke was National Society of Jesus, but they said that they called themselves NSJ only to sound cool. So that was definitely, that was his handle. His name was Josh, Conqueror, Mike Ross, who else from NSJ? I don't know. I forgot. Oh, Ace, Taiji. He was a Marvel 2 player as well. And then you had Team San Diego, which was Visant. Everyone says Viscant, but I always call him Visant. That's what's his name? Justice Ballantyne, Carnival, Genghis, Shady K. And there was a really disorganized group in the Inland Empire. That's everything along Route 66. So like Fontana, Rialto, San Bernardino. But there was a group of players who hung out, but they were kind of just like a gaggle. They never really came together and organized things. But that's the group that Duck Jr., aka Dark Prince, was from. Mike Chaos, Renee, really old player, Copy. Like, so I started getting to know all of these different regions and every individual in their groups. And we brought Team Rico with us everywhere. Every time we went anywhere in Southern California, that's what we did. We represented Team Rico, So, but I emphasized locals. I emphasized playing at UCR. there was a friend of ours named Ademala Thomas, who lived in one of the dormitories at UCR, and the dormitory was called Pentland Hills.
Mhm.
And they had a big screen TV in there. It was old cathode ray big screen TV, like those huge ones, and we always played there at the Pentland Hills. Like they had a conference room, and we were playing there almost every day of the week. Like we'd go there, be there all the way until like 9 a.m. and then go to sleep and wake up like at 6 p.m. and just get back in the car and go back out there. And everyone would come in the local area. And sometimes we'd get people come from far out, So it all kind of just rolled after the Mike Ortiz thing, the Moval thing, Yeah. I think I might have been named Moval if he didn't take the name Moval, because I'm from Moreno Valley too. I think it's a cool handle. But I named myself Joe Zaza. Anybody wants to know the origin of that? Stupid. So when I was young, I think I called myself when I was a kid, because my brother and I were vaguely aware of screen names, just screen names and being online. So when I was really young, I think I called myself Joey Cool.
Joey Cool?
Joey Cool. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. And no, I call myself Joe Cool. Joe Cool. And
like
then later,
from Cool World? Isn't that what the guy's name is?
No, it's Snoopy. Snoopy, they had a bunch of Peanut shirts, and Snoopy would always wear sunglasses, but I didn't know that.
That's right.
I don't think all the Joe Cool merchandise went out until later, so I called myself Joe Cool, and then I saw that Snoopy had the name, so I renamed it to Joey Cool, and I was like, God, this name sucks, but whatever. And then I watched The Godfather Part 3. I think that came out in 1992. And there was a character there named Joey Zaza. And Zaza is a Zasa in that movie. And I liked the name. I was like, damn, Zaza, that sounds tight. Especially when he got killed. He got killed by Anthony Garcia playing Vincent Corleone. Yeah. So I was like, all right, I'm going to call myself Joe Zaza, and I'm going to put 2 Z's instead of an S, and that's where the name stuck from that point on.
So,
and, go ahead.
Back in the day, when I heard of Team Rico, you guys were, you guys obviously were really good at all the games. But you guys were, it seemed like you were primarily, like, at least just from the outside looking in, right? Like, it seemed like you guys were more well known for Marvel. Right.
Yeah, we like Marvel a lot. It's funny. I want to tell you, I want to stop you right there. I always hated Marvel versus Capcom 2. I know I'm known for that game.
Okay.
I never liked that game. And
wow.
When I was at
tell him how you really feel, Joe.
Yeah, for real. And when I was at Brunswick Bowling Alley, and I saw Third Strike for the first time. So I got to give a little history here too. During the Street Fighter II era, World Warrior, Champion, Rainbow, Hyper Fighting, Super, and Super Turbo, right? By the time Super Street Fighter came out, I was pissed. I was like, where the fuck is Street Fighter 3? I was like, Capcom is irritating me, right? So I was like, unless Street Fighter 3 comes out, I'm not even going to play these games. So I missed Super and Super Turbo. I know Super era was pretty short. Like, nobody really liked Super. But Super Turbo, a lot of people were playing it, and I was like, I'm not playing that. And Alpha came out, and I was like, I like the art, but fuck this game too. Come on. Like, where's 3? I know it was called Zero in Japan, and it was a prequel, and I was like, okay, but where the... And then Alpha 2 came out, and I was like, I'm done with Capcom. I'm really like, Alpha 2? How are you going to be Street Fighter 02?
What are these custom combos? Mashing and shit? Like, what the...
Oh, God. Yeah. Like, don't even get me started on the mechanics of each of them, So, in 1997, 3 came out, and the first place I saw it was the Cal State San Bernardino Student Union. And
Actually, let me ask you a quick question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
When New Gen came out, right?
Yeah.
Because to me, that period, right? Like from like 1992 to like 99, right? That was like SNK and Capcom, like really, like freaking, like really going head to head, man. It's like reminiscent of like if you know of pro wrestling, right? Like WWE versus WCW,
I never saw that. Yeah.
and like, but like it was during this period when it was like Capcom versus SNK, like for real, for real. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there was a time, like the idea of a CVS game, right? Was not even like within the realm of possibility to us
was
when we
just
were
as
growing up.
heretical as Sonic being in Smash Brothers.
Yeah, or something like that, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
like it's just interesting because they were really pushing one another. You know what I mean? Like Capcom was, obviously Capcom was at the top. Street Fighter,
But it
Hyper
was still,
Fighting.
I agree. It was still
But
a
then,
fruitful
yeah.
time of creativity between the two companies. Yeah.
And then you had SNK coming out with these games, trying to find that right game, where it turned out really to be the right combination of games. And then obviously King of Fighters, But
yeah, I remember really liking Fatal Fury when it came out. Fatal Fury 1, and I loved Special. But,
yeah. So anyway,
yeah,
like I mentioned that because when New Gen came out, like
Mhm.
I remember the first time I played New Gen, it was either at a 7-Eleven or no, not a 7-Eleven, a Circle K.
Right.
It was either at a Circle K or like a really small video game shop in Monterey Park because I grew up in Monterey Park.
Some kind of hole in the wall.
Yeah, and in Monterey Park there were like back in the day in the early 90s, mid 90s, late 90s, there was a video game store on every block almost in Monterey Park, really.
I believe it.
So I remember the first time I played New Gen was in like it was either at a Circle K or a small video game shop. And what struck me about the game is it felt very SNK-y. Like you know what I mean? Like I was like, wow, this is a huge departure.
What
New
year
Gen,
was it?
New Gen.
Oh, you're talking New Gen.
I'm talking about New Gen because like when I first played it, it felt really SNK-ish, like even the announcer, right? The announcer sounded like the World Heroes announcer. Like,
yeah,
it was just so different from normal. Like even Alpha, right? Like even Alpha, it wasn't as different as as New Gen. You know what I mean? So anyway, yeah,
dude, I agree with you 100%. I remember seeing 3. So I saw the marquee, and all it said was 3, and I was like, and it looked like the Street Fighter.
Yo, the balls of Capcom, right? Like Capcom, right? Like damn, like all pip, like 3. They didn't even bother to put like the name of the game. They just 3.
Yeah. They were like, it's arrived. It's arrived. It's here. The wait is over, right?
Yeah.
And I saw Ryu and some wrestler dude, which was Alex.
Yeah.
And I was like, why? Like, where's Ken? Yeah. And so I go up to it, and I see in the attract mode, it's really featuring Alex, and that Ryu and Ken are kind of like subordinate to him. And I thought that was interesting. I thought that was great. And then I was watching the gameplay in attract mode, and I saw the parry. In that game, the parry had a big flash on the screen. And I was like, what the fuck was that? And I thought it was cool. And I played it. I think I was a scrub, and I think either I played Oro or Ken the first time I played it. But I loved it. I wanted to fucking play that game so bad, like against people, but nobody was playing it. And
because it was so fucking different, Joe.
Yeah.
It was so different from anything.
Yeah. I loved New Generation when it came out. There was nothing else like it. And I wasn't circulating in the arcades for some reason when Second Impact came out. I missed Second Impact's era. I was never in a fighting game scene with Second Impact. But when I saw Third Strike in 99 or 98 or 99, depending on, my recollection, but I remember seeing it in 98 early.
Maybe you saw a test version or a beta.
Yeah, exactly. But when I saw it and I played it and how clean it was versus New Generation,
and Second Impact even,
Yeah, yeah. I was like, they perfected it. I knew it like really quick, but getting my hands on the control, I was like, this is it. Like this is the only game I ever want to play. You know?
Yeah.
So really early when it first came out, and I jumped on it, and I only got to, even in Brunswick, people were afraid of Third Strike, but I was always on it. My first main on Third Strike, back then I was big into 360 guys, because to me, doing a 360 input was the final frontier. Like I was like, I haven't been able to do 360s in my mind, so I was using Sodom and Alpha, Zangief and Marvel 1. I was even using Zangief in the early days of Marvel 2. Darren Meister and EX. And so my first main on Third Strike was Hugo, and I also liked Q. So those were my first two mains in Third Strike. I was just always using Hugo and Q. And I remember playing Moval. Moval jumped on it, and I was scared because I knew that I could take Moval, Mike Ortiz on in Marvel, but I didn't have the chutzpah for fucking conventional Street Fighter.
Did Moval use Chun?
No, I think he used Ryu or Ken.
Oh, okay.
And I remember I switched away from Q and I went to Ken, and I did EX Tatsu to chip him out, and he parried the whole thing. And when he did that, I was like, yeah, I love this game. Even though I was the victim there, I was like, I love
but
this
game.
But
it really is the parry, Joe, right? Because, you're a smart guy, right? And clearly you're a smart guy. And you just, I think, like, the parry is going to go down as basically probably the most, what's a good word? I guess the most controversial mechanic, right? In all the fighting games, I'm pretty sure it will, because the parry nearly bankrupted Capcom. You know what I mean? Like in terms of like let's admit it, right? It really almost did. But at the same time, it's just a natural evolution of the fighting game. That's what led to the parry.
It definitely was.
And when I first heard of Street Fighter 3, the new gen, the first thing that my best friend, he's obviously still my best friend now, Mr. Universe, Yuri, longtime Third Strike Urian player, but the first thing Mr. Universe said to me, he was like, dude, you gotta check out the parry, dude. Like that's the first thing he mentioned to me when he told me to check out Street Fighter 3, and I think like just that Third Strike, yeah, it was so vastly different from Second Impact, right? Even within the series, there's a big departure, because New Gen and Second Impact, they pretty much felt the same,
They did. New Gen felt like a EX pack of New Gen or something like that. They got 2 extra characters, well 3 because of Kuma, right? And I don't know, the EX moves, right? So Second Impact was cool. It was cool. It stood on its own, but when I played Third Strike, I was like, dude, this is clean.
Yeah.
There's nothing really wonky about this game.
Yeah.
Like
it's as clean as the player is. You know what I mean? No, I'm serious. Like I have never seen a fighting game that most closely reflects the kind of person or player that you are that Third Strike does. To me, that's one of the reasons why I think Third Strike is the best game. Because check this out, Joe. Third Strike, right? You don't adapt to the game, dude. Third Strike adapts to you. Just think about that for a second, right? You know how like people, you gotta adapt. The game is adapting to you, and I think that's why so many people continue to play Third Strike, because it feels like they can express themselves most genuinely through that game.
Yeah. I agree with that.
In other games, it just, you got to do this. You got to do this.
Yeah.
If you don't do this, then this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, there are way more opportunities for you to crystallize some kind of expression.
Yeah.
on that game, and it's really enabled by the parry. I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that.
Yeah. Well,
Even
so go ahead.
go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, man.
No. I was thinking even as you get into high level like compact play with option selecting,
Mm-hmm.
parry selecting, block selecting, and retreat, like any kind of retreat based pause play, like there's so many avenues for defense,
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
and then the fluid minded player has to also in compact play sometimes regress.
Yeah.
There's no point in engaging another person's defense and twitching around with option parry selects. Sometimes you just got to rip shit. you know.
All right.
So yeah,
So I think it'd be a good time to take our first break. But when we come back,
sure.
obviously we're gonna have more podcasts with Joe Zaza. But this time I want to talk a little bit about supercuts, obviously.
Mhm.
So we'll get to that in a little bit. But in the meantime, guys, stick around. We'll be back with some more Mutant Experience podcasts. How's it going, guys? Welcome to more Mutant XPerience podcast with my very special guest tonight, the founder of Supercuts, Joe Zaza. So let's get to it, Joe. Let's talk a little bit about Supercuts. What is Supercuts? Like, what happened? Its history. I mean, just let's start at the beginning, man. What's going on with Supercuts?
So let's talk about the mid 2000s. So in the early 2000s, I was in Team Rico. We were active. My activity in the FGC started to wane in the mid 2000s because of Rick. Rick started getting dialyzed. He wasn't able to go out. So I went from emphasizing local to even more local. We were doing house meets in my garage, and they got a lot of traction. We got a lot of high head counts in my garage meets for a while, but eventually I fell off the radar. Like I just stopped because life. I had to work. I had to go to school. So towards the end of the 2000s, I was having girl problems.
Okay.
And towards the end of the 2000s, I was like, I got to get out of this place. I was an Air Force brat. There was something inside of me that was calling me back to the military lifestyle. So in 2007, like right under the line for active duty, which is 27, I was 26. I went to the recruiter's office and I took the tests and I got like the #1 enlisted job in the Air Force. I shipped out at the beginning of 2008. Those girl problems turned into marriage, and I got married right before I joined. And I was in for 6 years. So 2008 to 2014, I was in the Air Force, and I didn't play. I didn't play Street Fighter.
Wow.
I got stationed at Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska, which is in Bellevue, a little ways from Omaha.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to their family fun arcade in Omaha.
Mm-hmm.
I visited it, but I wasn't playing at the time. I met some of the members of their community. I didn't meet Cameron Bloodurian. I think he was locked up at the time, but I wish I would have met him in person, because he and I are pretty good homies now.
Mm-hmm.
But save for that,
That's crazy that there's like a Supercuts tie to Nebraska, dude. It's so crazy, right?
I'm going into that because that's like my void period. I was not playing Street Fighter. I was just all Air Force. And then I got out. I discharged in 2014. I was trying to be a lifer, but I was going to get medically discharged anyway. And I somehow skipped out of the med board, and I just honorably discharged. And then I got 100% disability from the VA, for my issue. I had an issue when I was in the Air Force. I had bladder issue, that just suddenly just popped up in my life, and it's still bugging me to this day, by the way. But when I got out in 2014, my sister, Rick passed away in 2010. So, I came back to Moreno Valley, and my sister was like, yeah, Rick, I bought these sticks for Rick, and there were 2 Mad Catz TEs that I still have in my house. There's one for you and one for Rick, the Dostrick and the Joe Zaza one. I was like, oh, cool. And she also...
Was it the Marvel one? The Marvel stick?
No, it was a Street Fighter 4. Okay. It was a black Street Fighter 4. But Team Rico got together a bunch of money when Rick passed away and presented my family with a Marvel vs. Capcom Xbox 360 stick.
Yeah, I have that stick, yeah.
Yeah, and Quentin and I, Action Hank and I, that's what we used to play on Fightcade, because he decked that stick out with all kinds of new parts and shit. But anyway, we had these sticks. My sister had a PS3, and she had online edition. I don't know why she got it. She wasn't playing it really, but I jumped on it in the end of 2014, like around November. I jumped on, and
what was your screen name?
I think it was Joe Zaza 100, Joe_Zaza 100. And I was using 12. I was like, all right, if I'm going to get back into Third Strike, I had different mains through the years. So from 99 to 01, it was Q and Hugo. From 02 to 04, it was Sean and Oro. From 05 to 07, it was Ryu and Alex. And then that void period, 08 to 2014, didn't play. Then in 2014, when I picked it up again, I was just like full force. I was like, I'm going to fucking learn 12, And that was all harking back to when I saw Chicky Sodom use him in Evo 2K2, the first Evo. Chicky Sodom was in it was an exhibition, US versus Japan. I don't think it was 5-on-5. I think Japanese had more players willing to participate. But when he was using 12 and doing the low glide, I know everyone calls it IAD, instant air dash. I don't like calling it that. I call it low glide. But he was low gliding back and forth and building meter that way. And I was like, whoa, when I saw it back then. And so I was like, I'm going to learn that low glide. Then I started trying to abuse it and getting fucked up for trying to abuse it, obviously. And then I started to learn the mechanics, like the meta of 12, basically. But I boiled and churned through that, dude. Just, I know we're kind of digressing from the whole supercuts thing, but I'll come back to it. But I was boiling and churning through using 12 on online edition because I was aware of online gaming trolling through back in the day. I used to go to internet cafes, but I didn't play. I just used to meet people up, and then sometimes they had arcades in there, you know? And I saw MMORPGs and FPSs, and I saw the toxicity of playing online. I had exposure to it, but not firsthand. You know what I mean? Secondhand exposure to it. And when I jumped on Third Strike and I started receiving this firsthand way late in the game of online games and online fighters, because online fighters began what, 09? You know? But when I started to experience, you know, the trolling, the taunting, the teabagging, the texting, you know, I was like, what the fuck? Like, I didn't. Oh, and also people denying, you know, like not readying up, you know, or beating you once and then never playing you again. Like all of that shit was hitting me all at once. And so when I say I boiled and churned through the process of developing 12 as a main, I mean it. Like nobody wanted to give me the opportunity to level that up, you know? So I was just scrounging games here and there online. And again, the toxicity of playing online, you know, adapting to that, I got sick and tired of it. I really did. Like I played a little bit in November 2014, then I stopped because I was working. And then I left my work in June 2015. And I picked it up again in June 2015, and I grinded on online edition until the end of 2016. And I had leveled up my 12 pretty well in that period of time. And around the end of 2016, I was like, you know what? No, around the middle of 2016, that's when I started Supercuts. Because I was going to James Games on a regular basis with my buddies, Action Hank and Transpan. And we met one night. Transman and I, we met two buddies who are in Supercuts right now, D Hunter and Bloop Bloop Bloops. Everyone calls him Bloops for short, but that's his handle, and he insists it has to be with a lowercase b. That's Bloop Bloop Bloops. His name is Brian Gutierrez, but we call him Bloops. And Bloops was telling me, oh yeah, I started going to UCR right after Team Rico stopped their activity. And I was like, no shit. And he was like, I was born in 83. And I was like, whoa, dude, like I expected you to be like an 09er, but you've been around for a long time. And he's like, no, I've been playing for a long time. And okay. And D Hunter was like, yeah, but I'm an 09er. He was born in 88, but he was like, I didn't start playing until around 09 and Street Fighter 4. And we talked about it. Like we had a long conversation, the four of us. So when you call me the godfather of Supercuts, really the founding fathers was that conversation outside of James Games, like all the way until 5 a.m. I think James Games closed at 2 at that time, and we stayed outside talking for like 3 hours. And we said that James Games was not a suitable venue. That we came to that conclusion. The operator of James Games, which is in Upland, his name is Rick, and I love that guy. I want you to know I love that guy. He's really highly opinionated about the way he operates arcades. And kudos to him. He's one of the only standalone arcades left. So, you know, I know I sound like that I'm backpedaling a little bit when I say it wasn't suitable, but really it's up to him how to survive as a business. And he did not exactly cater to the fighting game crowd, you know, and one of the things that we demand, obviously, is maintenance. You know, if a button breaks, fix it, you know, and he wasn't exactly Johnny on the spot with all of that.
Mhm.
So that's what we were complaining about. He's still a friendly guy, and every time I go, because the rapport that exists between him and I, he'll fix shit if I'm there. He'll always listen to me. But overall, for the overall community of Third Strike players who were going to James games, I think he had 2 setups at the time, 2 head-to-heads, not Astro cabs, but those lower, the sit-down cabs, and just the players as a whole were like unanimously, yeah, this place is not suitable for competitive Third Strike, and we wanted to play it competitively. And so I told them, hey, you guys online? I play on PSN on online edition. One of Bloop said he was, but that his account got banned. D Hunter said that he was on Xbox Live. And so I said, we need to organize offline meets. Like, we really need to do that. And there was a series of tournaments from February through May for Third Strike. And I don't know if you know who Wicked Element is, Juan Mesa.
I've seen the screen name, yeah.
Yeah. Wicked Element, he's a Hugo player.
Yeah.
And he was winning these tournaments. Like, there was a series of Third Strike tournaments in 2015, and his name was always up on first place in the marquee. And I was like, dude, I play that guy online and I beat him. That's what I was thinking, and maybe I was beating him because of the weirdness of the 12 matchup in his defense, because I've played him recently and he's just a strong Street Fighter player overall, But I was thinking, man, I want to play that guy. And he didn't come out for the 2016 series, which was run by a fella named Tech Bonus. And he ran them. I won every single one. There were like bi-weeklies, and each time that I won, whoever was second place was like, I know a stronger player than than me, and I'm gonna go get him. And I was like, get him. And so they would bring a stronger player every other tournament, like every new tournament, and I was just beating them. And I think the strongest ones were Big Dan 420, who's on Fightcade. We call him Drudos, and back in the FFA days, they called him Black Pyro. But he wasn't using Yun. He wasn't using Yun like Pyro Lee. He was using, I think he was using either Ken or Akuma. And I think the weirdness of the 12 matchup still got him. I knew that if I engaged him in compact play, like if I used my another main like Sean, that he would probably fuck me up. So I was like, dude, thank God for the distance game that I developed with 12, because I didn't have to engage him in compact. But back then, my compact play has gotten a little better since then. But respect the ages. Jonathan Rodriguez, he was the last one that they brought. And I was like, oh shit, yeah, I've played that guy online. That guy's decent, So when they brought him, he got all the way to second place. And then I beat him in the finals, and he complained about the sticks after the fact. And I was like, oh, come on, dude. And he was just like, but really? And I told him, I'll flip with you. Like in the middle of grand finals, I was like, let's flip sides. And he didn't want to. So I was like, fuck, there was no way that I could counter his, legitimacy claim, whether it was legit or not. So that's when I said, okay, I'm going to host meets at my house. D Hunter, I called on Reggie. His name is Reggie Rodriguez. I said, D Hunter, you got to be my promoter on this, bro. Like, I'm going to take some pictures of my neighborhood, because I live in an old neighborhood in March Air Reserve Base. And I said, I'm going to take some pictures. I'm going to send them to you. Tell me what you think. And he was like, dude, your house is like a resort. And I was like, well, shit, I just want people to play. And he was like, okay, I'm going to let people know. And so the first Supercuts we had was on June 3rd, 2016. And I had also made contact with a guy on PSN Online Edition named High Ranking SRK. His name is Jacob Lynch, and he came out to my house, and he was a cool guy, but he was a pad player only. Only pad. Not only pad. Like, this guy, in order to play, he used to eat Doritos so that he could get the Dorito grease on his thumb so he could use the D-pad.
What?
Like, yes. Like, Action Hank is in the other room and he's laughing his ass off right now. Okay, so I was introduced into this new world of Third Strike where, like, I was like, okay, there's online players who have really strange habits. And then there's OGs like me, and there's a gap. There is a generation gap. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was going to Don's Arcade a couple of times around that time too, and
Mm-hmm.
Don's crowd is 100% purist, like
Yeah.
arcade legit.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't want to play on anything less than a CPS3 Super Gun. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so that kind of OG crowd and that OG mentality, and how they would not budge from that. That was all like you know the roots of my culture here at Supercuts started germinating. And I was like, all right, so basically what I have to do to fill this house with heads, I want a good head count, is to bridge the gap between the online or the console and the offline era, the
Mm-hmm.
the arcade era. And I focused on that. So by focusing on it, I mean, like, I zoomed in on what were the values of the online era. What are the values of the online era? Because I believe we're in the online era.
Mm-hmm.
And where the values of the offline era. And there's some good and bad from both.
Mm-hmm.
And when I realized, okay, I got to throw out all the cons and I got to just throw in all the pros, and try to make the context of my place as a venue provider the middle ground for that. And so in order to do that, in order to communicate that, I couldn't just have fellas come down here and play and go home. Like, one of the things that I introduced right from the beginning was what I call a huddle. So somewhere where we reach peak head count, because I open the doors at 8, and then events, if any events, they start at 10. But people don't really start showing up anywhere between 11 and 1 in the morning. So whenever I hit my peak head count for the night, I realize,
Mm-hmm.
okay, ain't nobody more gonna come. I raise my hand up and I suspend all the gaming in the house, and I said, we're gonna do a huddle. So they come into one of the rooms, and I didn't want to be the one to speak, honestly. Ever since my beginnings in the FGC, I've tried to decentralize control as a venue provider, as an organizer. When I take off my player cap and I put on my organizer hat, I try to decentralize attention, and that's the wisdom I guess I got from my father, my mom. But I've been like that from the beginning. And recently, seeing Mike Ross, he made a post fairly recently on Reddit where he explained why he got away from the FGC, and him basically echoing all of those sentiments. The sentiments that I've had from the beginning. I value authenticity over personality. And early in the FGC, before we had streaming, online personalities, YouTube videos, anything, that was something that really weirded me out. For example, when I went to Golfland back in the day, and there were people and they acted strange. They acted strange in person, and they acted pretty civil on SureYouCan.com on the forums, And I was like, what the fuck? Like, why are you not meeting the personality that you're projecting online? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why is your online and your offline persona different? And it was, honestly, if you think about it, I know you probably think about these things. The target demographic market for Street Fighter, for fighting games, period, I think it's grown over time. I think before they targeted a much smaller age bracket, but I think since the inception of online gaming and Generation X getting older, I think that it's grown.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's anywhere from like fucking 14 all the way up to like 32. Or that's the market that they're targeting.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we go through developmentally, and I'm not trying to get all professory, I'm just saying this, like, I really apply these thoughts into what I'm doing as I host my meets, is identity versus role confusion. That's Eric Erickson. That's the psychosocial stage of development. And it's the first stage of adulthood development, as we're transition from teenage years to our 20s. We're always asking ourselves, who am I?
Mm.
That's the essential question.
I'm still asking that question. So
yeah. I think for Americans, for United States Americans, which I am, it's been prolonged as a crisis, as a stage, as a developmental stage or crisis. It's been prolonged. And before, people went through it and they had to figure that shit out quick. You know, people were getting married really early back in the baby boomer days. You know, and shit, they had a family and they were expected, and there was a lot of cultural pressure, a lot of family values that made people, you know, stay in that lane. But as family values kind of eroded, you know, post World War II, you know, through the civil rights movement, through the 70s, 80s, 90s, you know, what what ended up happening was, people were like, well, maybe I'll get married, maybe I won't, maybe I'll get married and get a divorce. Like they don't, I don't know. It seems to me like people just don't give a shit, you know, about
things that they used to give a shit about.
Yeah, you could say it broadly like that, right?
Okay.
So when you say that you're still figuring it out, I understand. You know, in some ways, you know, I think I'm over it. I think I'm a fighting gamer. I used to deny it, like I was talking about my unease with accepting that role back, especially when Dosrick was doing it online, and me thinking it was a geeky thing, and me denying it. I really believe that the offline era, pre 09, pre online, all of the online support that exists around playing fighting games now. All of us in the old community who were basically, I mean, from today's perspective, you would have to call us self-sponsored players because sponsorship wasn't even a question in our head. You know, there was, who the fuck was going to pay us to do anything? I remember when I got out of the Air Force and I got on Online Edition and I played some people and they said, dude, I was just looking for a casual match, but you have to go all pro gamer on me. And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, I honestly was lost when I got out of the Air Force in 2014. I missed the entire MVC3 and Street Fighter 4 era. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. So when somebody said you had to go all pro gamer on me, I was like, what the? I don't get paid for this shit. That was my reply. I don't get paid for this shit. What are you talking about? Who gets paid for this? And then slowly Transman, Tony Romero from old OG Team Rico, he started filling me in. He started showing me YouTube and Twitch and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. And I didn't even care. Like when people would say that, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna fucking beat your ass. I'm gonna push your shit in. I don't give a fuck. You know, like as soon as I realized what they were talking about, I was like, yeah, that's how it's gonna happen. That's how it's gonna be. And they were like, shit. And then they wouldn't play me. I was like, ah. But anyway, identity versus role confusion, target demographic, going back to supercuts. I realized that most of the players who come over to my house, they're going through role confusion. They don't know who the fuck they are. They're, you know, what ends up happening with individuals, United States Americans, is they're picking and choosing different roles. You know, they want to be this and then they want to be that, and they want to try these different hats on. And it's a process of discovering, you know, what it is exactly that you want to do, you know, without paying attention to the external, you know, the extrinsic circumstances, you know. And while they're going through that, one of the main social relationships that can help you discover yourself is, in, you know, according to Erickson, is either a role model or a peer group. For me, electing a role model is a little not dubious, but it's dangerous. It's a little dangerous because role models don't always live up to your expectations when you first elect them in your head, you know. But peer group, I think that's really, really good. And the whole, you know, culture of adjusting to, you know, the different humor of the people that are around you. Sometimes it involves a little bit of hazing. Sometimes it involves a little bit of, you know, patting on the back, you know. But that's the kind of environment that or the values that I had growing up in the offline world, you know. So I emphasize that when I did the huddles, I was like always talking about, you know, okay, the online era likes this. Some of the shit that the online era is retarded. The offline era likes this. Some of that's retarded, you know. So let's throw in, let's submitted for what your guys is, as a suggestion. Let's focus on these things. And
Mhm.
I got a lot of receptivity to that. I didn't want to be the one who would always stand up in front of the huddles. I always told them, I want you guys to be up here speaking as well.
Mhm.
And a couple of the guys rose to the occasion a couple of times, but it just so happens that most of the time, even now, like the last huddle that I did, I had two of the other guys speak. They held the floor for a good while. But
Mhm.
that's one of the things that we started to do for Supercuts. For anybody who doesn't know the origin of the name, I know the name sounds stupid. Just like I felt like Team Rico sounded stupid back in the day. But Supercuts, D Hunter, Reggie, one of the four of the founding fathers of Supercuts, he was always using SA1 Ken.
Mhm.
And I was like, bro, you got to use SA3. You know me, I'm a low tier player.
Mhm.
But in order to be a low tier player, you have to understand tiers.
Mhm.
So, or a successful low tier player. And I was like, you got to use SA3 Ken, bro. Like, it's got better range, it's easier for confirmation, etc. And he was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I understand that, Joe. And again, Reggie's an 09er, right? So he'll admit it. He was like, but SA1 is kind of like my style. And I was like, fuck your style, dude. Fuck style. Like, I was like, SA3 Ken is top tier and you're fucking dumb. You're full of shit. And we played him on Xbox Live around that time. Like, he would schedule for us to be in the lobby. And dude, Action Hank, Transman, and we all took turns reaming him. Like, he would not give up SA1 Ken. And he always counter poked, for example. So if I used Ryu, I could do low, short, and just one after the other SA1, and it would hit him every fucking time, So I was like, bro, like, I was trying to help him along. He wasn't getting it. And out of sheer frustration, I told him, okay, bro, we're going on a food run. We're done with you. And he's like, all right, Joe, thanks. So I know I could tell you were mad at me, and I was like, fuck all of that. All right, dude, we're going out. So Quentin, Tony, and we jumped in the car, and I was like, I swear to God, man, fucking Reggie and that stupid super uppercut show you repa, right? And Quentin, he goes like, super cuts, and we were just like laughing because it's a dumb joke, but we were laughing in the moment. And later down the line, when I started planning on running meets at my house, and I was creating the Facebook message board for Supercuts, and I was like, this is me and Tony. Tony and I were standing there, Transman, and I was like, so what are we going to call it? I was like, I think we should call it Joe Zaza's house.
Joe Zaza's house.
Yeah. And he's like, nah, man, this shit's got to have a name, man. It's got to ring out. And I was like, nah, man, like, just let's be neutral here. And he's like, no, fuck that, man. And I was like, well, what the fuck do you want to call it? Team Rico again? Like Team Rico 2.0 or some shit? And he was like, nah, that's done. That day's gone. And he was like, how about Supercuts? And I was like, no. I was like, we're not calling it that. That's retarded. And he was like, nah, man, Supercuts. Like, he kept saying it like it was better. Like, the more he said it, the better it would be. I was like, fuck you. Like, we're not calling that shit Supercuts. It sounds like a fucking barber, like. And he was like, nah, man, just get a picture of Ken doing a fucking shirt you again, and let's steal the logo off of the barber shop and just make it a joke, right? And we named it after Reggie and his stupid habit of using SA1 Ken. He still uses SA1 Ken. And now here at Supercuts, it's like a meme here at Supercuts. If you're using SA2 Akuma, if you're using SA2 Sean, that's the Supercut super, like, that's what we say. Even SA2 Ryu, or like Supercuts, but it's dumb. Yeah, but it stuck. Everyone started liking it. I actually kind of, there's no branding because it's not for money, but I made it the impact font all the time off of the computer. So anytime I do my announcements, I make it look the same. I have consistency with it. So, it ended up becoming funny but good. It's funny when new people come in and they're like, the fuck Supercuts? Like, and I'm like, yeah, we play Third Strike. There's a 3 in there now. So, that we play Third Strike. Yeah, right? Pokey poke poke, and they're like, all right, I guess I'll play. I guess I'll come down. But our head counts have been really consistent, especially. Oh, by the way, we started June 3rd, 2016, so we've been 2 years strong.
Wow.
And we were offline all the way up till July 29, 2017. That was the date that we first streamed. And with the help of Quentin Fairchild, aka Gate, he's on Fightcade. A lot of people know him in the Twitch world now. And before we went online, broadcasting the activity that we have here, I lost my place. Let me think. We were talking about the name.
And you were talking about
Yeah, help me find myself.
yeah, you were talking about the day it started, or on the day it started.
Oh, right. Okay, I know what I was going. Okay, so we have seasons.
Mhm.
So on March 21st, we do a season. So season 1 was kind of short.
Mhm.
It was June through March 2017. And then on March 21st, or the first meet after March 21st, I announced season 2.
Mhm.
And the stream began somewhere halfway through season 2. And then we did a season 3 launch this March. And these seasons that we do, we're trying to make sure that, we put new stuff in the house. Like, I've got custom wall scrolls in here of pictures of us, pictures of my announcements sometimes. And definitely updating the stream, the layout for the stream. We work slow here. I want you to know, as far as supercuts, we work slow, but we work. When things change, things get better over time. I have spent so much money this year putting cameras and updating my tower here. My tower was donated to us by Moneyman Dan. It's really a grassroots community thing. We don't expect to make any money out of this. Like, I keep telling people at the huddles, because there are a lot of the online era players who come into Supercuts and they have ideas. They're like, hey, if we do this and we do that, then we'll get more money. And I was like, we're not doing this shit for money. I'm not trying to be the next PewDiePie of Twitch, I'm just trying to broadcast offline play, and sometimes it takes a while for that to settle in their brains. They come to Supercuts and they're like, but Joe, and the but Joes wear off over time, But when it finally does and they realize this is a grassroots thing, we get a lot of people who stick with us, and I put out an invitation to everyone. Every time anybody's watching Supercuts, I'm like, dude, if you ever come to the LA area and you want to drive down here or get a ride, Uber, whatever, you're welcome to be here every Saturday. That's what I do. I think it's really important to continue offline play. That's one of our mottos, is quality offline play in an online world. Acknowledging that, it's been encroached and taken over.
Well, take me to I want you to take me through a typical day, a Supercut Saturday, because you guys do this every Saturday, like you said. But take me to a typical day for you in terms of what time do you usually wake up on that Saturday? What do you do set up? Just from the beginning, man. I want to know what you do in order to sort of create this thing.
It's really come together through the support of every member. Everyone who comes here has contributed one material good or another to this place. And so Quentin is basically, I always tell people who want to leave stuff in my place. I remember back in Team Rico, I was always surprised. I guess people just know that I got a love for the game, period, for Street Fighter in general. So back in the Team Rico days, and this is an analogy to today, people would always leave their shit with me. Their Maz sticks back in the day, those were bulky, Sometimes their TVs, their CRTs back then. I had multiple CRTs, multiple systems with all the VMUs, the memory, and the controllers. I had a GameStop in the trunk of my Geo Metro. That's what I drove back in the day. And this is a small car, but I had a GameStop in the fucking trunk, And now in my house, I've got almost a damn television studio in here, And again, it came together through all the support of all of our people. And I tell people when they want to leave stuff with me, because they do. Like just the other day, Big Dan 420, he told me, and I advised him against it. He told me that he was going to get a pair of Astro caps with Third Strike in a link. And I was like, good for you. And he was like, I want to bring them here. And I was like, don't do that. Don't give them to me. I'll tell people when I'm comfortable with being the custodian of their property. And a lot of property is in my custody, and Quentin and I, Action Hank, who lives here, we take care of the shit. His name is Quentin, and I call him Q. And he works on so many damn projects through the week. I call him Qjects now. I'm like, another Qject, and he's fixing something. He's opening a computer. He's opening a stick. He's sanding the side of a stick. He's painting something. And anytime I have technical issues, he fixes it, So that's kind of the course of the week. For me, I'm on disability, so I got nothing to do. I wake up whenever the hell I want to. Thank God. There are a lot of people who go to work. And God bless all of them. But for me, I work on the marketing freelance whenever I can. I was telling you, down in the dumps physically lately. So there's a lot of times where I want to work on something, and I'm like just too tired or I can't do it. I ask for help. Every time I do the huddles, I reach out for help. I'm like, who wants to help me with this? And a lot of times people don't respond, but there are times where people help me out. What happens in the morning is, usually on Saturdays, I create the announcement that I put up on Twitter. I put up on a Facebook message board. I'll start getting a feel for who's going to come down. I monitor my posts on the message board to see who's seen it, who's liked it, who's commented, anybody in my inbox. I'm trying to get kind of a projected head count, like a loose projected head count, because I don't want to confirm. Even if somebody confirms yes, for example, I don't want to lock them in as a confirmed yes, because that's, in my experience, from Team Rico all the way to through Supercuts. My experience has been, it's kind of like when you work retail and somebody calls and asks you if you have a product, what's the next question they're going to ask? It's always going to be how much, right? Yeah, exactly. That's what happens with offline organizing. Anybody who's ever taken off the player cap and put on the organizer cap, or anyone who's dual-hatted in those regards, knows that when you're organizing something and you say, hey, it's at this time, this place, be there. And then they go, who's going to go? Who's going to be there, And I have to give some kind of idea, of who's going to show up. And that's what I mean by projected head count. I create a projected head count in my mind as the week progresses, especially on Saturday. I have to make sure that that's locked as good as I can make it, so that I can report that to any potential guests. And they'll refuse to come. They'll not come on a whim because they hear that the head count's going to be low. But I don't ever inflate or exaggerate my figures. I don't. If I tell people, there are times where I'm straight up, I'm like, bro, you would be my head count, bro. Like it's probably going to be Gate, because Gate usually shows up. So it's going to Gate, Action Hank, and me. And if that's the case, then I tell people that, And lately, my head count average is really high compared to before. Like I'm getting an average of like 12, 12 heads. At every single head that shows up, I roll out the red carpet for them. Like I try to host. Early in the Supercuts days, going back to the offline era of Supercuts, which was 2016 all the way through mid 2017, I realized really quick as we began Supercuts that, because I created this shit with a profit motive more than a service motive, I wanted to have people in here so I could play them. And through the first 3 or 4 meets, I started to realize that's not going to happen. People were coming and people were asking me, hey, Jose, I need this part. Or can I hook up to this TV? It's not working. Do you have anything to drink? Where do I go and smoke? Because I got people who go and smoke out at the bridge, I got a bridge near my house between our neighborhood and the outside part of the neighborhood. Anyway, they're asking me all these questions, and not only that, people were walking up to me and disclosing stuff. People were saying, "Hey, Joe," I guess because the whole thing, how I approach this from a developmental perspective, people feel like they can confide in me. You know, early in the Team Rico days, I want you to know, a lot of people who knew me back in those days knew I was kind of an asshole. And what I mean by that is, I wasn't elitist or elitist, I definitely wasn't as far as the FGC was concerned. I was in- inclusion as opposed to exclusivity was always a big deal to me. Okay. So I was really inclusive. So if we had a potential person, I would host them. I would always bring them in as a guest and say, yeah, come and play, you know. But because I kind of felt a little bit excluded from the core FGC back in the day, and I didn't want anybody to feel that. But when I say I was kind of an asshole, what I mean is people would confide stuff to me, and my loose lips sunk ships. Like I didn't. I was like, don't tell me shit if you don't want the whole world to know. That was the way that I was, and I was really uncompromising with being blunt, and I was young and stupid, I was in the Air Force. While I was in the Air Force and I was being a linguist, I actually, during the time where I got sick, I had to do additional duties. So I had to do work that wasn't a part of my career field. So I wasn't doing any translation with my foreign language. Instead, at one point or another, I was working as a chaplain's assistant. And when you work for the chaplain in any of the branches of the military, there's a bunch of help and response agencies. Like there's sexual assault response coordinator, psychologist, the JAG, Judge Advocate General, and there's the chaplain. And each of those response agencies, they have one particular thing that they emphasize, you know. And one of the thing that it was for the chaplain, apart from religion, was 100% confidentiality. They weren't a mandated reporter. So if you went to the chaplain and said, "I murdered someone," they couldn't say anything. If you told the psychologist or the sexual response coordinator and you disclosed that you had committed a crime, you were going to get snitched on, you know. But if you went to the chaplain couldn't say anything. That was part of the oath that they swear to be a military chaplain, you know. And so I was working as staff under the chaplain's office in my wing, and learning that and learning the importance of that really taught me. Also, another thing is getting ill, and learning that it's stressful to constantly update and disclose aspects of your illness. Or when my brother Dostrik passed away and my mother passed away in 2012, and having to update everybody on my feelings. Every time you update somebody on your feelings is like reopening a wound, you know? So I learned some kind of wisdom while I was in there. Come out, start hosting Supercuts a couple of years after I discharged, and I started to learn that when people approach me and they disclose things to me, shut the fuck up. So confidence, they tell me something in confidence, that means I need to be confidential, and a lot of people were coming up to me, and the joke I always use is like they would say, "Joe, I've got herpes." Nobody ever told me that. Again, nobody's ever told me that, but yeah, that's a joke. But if somebody were to tell me that, like sometimes people tell me things that are really surprising, and I'm like, "Yo, like I'm not a trained professional," like, but I got used to the whole, channeling my, I guess, magnetism, because I'm the venue provider and people are magnetically drawn to you when you're the venue provider or an organizer. And trying to channel that into, something constructive instead of denying it, because that's an aspect of playing fighting games. I mean, to me, I have this whole stupid philosophy about playing fighting games, and one of the highest levels of playing fighting games, and this has nothing to do with the game, it has to do with perpetuating the existence of the culture, so graduating from the player role to the organizer role. And as you go into the organizer role, you're going to deal with that discomfort. You're going to deal with, having to be the center of attention in a group of fellas, and reminding them over and over again, we're here to play Street Fighter, And so channeling that magnetism has to do with letting them confide in you and helping them along with whatever their issues are, because sometimes people can't make it because of resources, just plain material resources. I don't have gas money, you know, but sometimes they can't make it because they're depressed. And you allowing them to confide in you about those things really goes a long way into, growing the activity, you know? So um, that's one of the aspects of what I do through the week. That's one of the aspects of what I do on Saturday. Somebody calls me. Sometimes they tell me they don't have resources. They're like, "Bro, I don't have a car," and I'm like, "Okay." And I know where everyone lives. Just
Mhm.
about everyone who comes into my house, I know where they live. So I know where another guy who lives close, and
Uh-huh.
I call that guy. I say, "Are you coming tonight? Can you pick up this guy?" You know, and then they show up. They walk through my door. Hey, you know, so I'm busy hosting through the night. Rewinding back to 2016, I realized 3 or 4 meets in, bro. I kept trying to push the issue of playing. I was like, I want to play,
Uh-huh.
but I can't. I
Mhm.
can't. I gotta host.
Mhm.
Hosting is an essential part of this, you know. And I play through the week. I play online on Fightcade, which is a real big compromise for me, you know. But that's what I try to do. And when I play online, even to this day, like I have a homie Decoy Mantis who's in the chat room. You know, I met him on a PSN online edition. You know,
Mhm.
I meet people online and I try to bridge that anonymity gap, because
Mhm.
what exists online, one of the values of playing online is anonymity, and jumping over that wall that people build is not an easy task. You know, a lot of people are like, man, fuck you, you know, like, who are you trying to talk to me? I'm no one and everyone at the same time. You know, everyone's inscrutable online, right?
Mhm.
So, getting through that, breaking down those walls and being friendly is really hard. Like, I'll give a shout out to the dude in Fightcade, Hehe, Hee or whatever his name is. I don't know who he is. Some people said that maybe he's Anson Fung. You know, nobody fucking knows in Fightcade who that guy is, and he's really legit. He's like a legit good player, and he doesn't want to give anyone the opportunity to play him. He only plays people at his leisure. I think I saw Nika KO getting into it with him the other day on Fightcade, because he'll win a few and then shut people out, you know, and he always denies this behavior. Again, he's completely inscrutable. I'm everyone and no one at the same time. You know, he's probably one of the best examples that I know out there. You know, but being able to get through that and get somebody through this door, and you're no longer an online player to me, you're an offline player to me, you're ahead. I'm glad to meet you. And usually, once I can see the whites of their eyes, everything in the past is forgotten. Judas, Big Dan 420, he was embarrassed when he first met me, or when he actually admitted to me, because I met him before he admitted to me that he was Big Dan. And he was like, Joe, I got a confession to make. I'm like, what? He's like, I'm a troll online. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm Big Dan 420. Or he told me one day while we were fighting, and I was like, bro, like, fuck all of that. I don't care anymore. And he's like, no, no. He's still, to this day, he looks down and he's like, he's penitent, like, he's like, please forgive me. And I'm like, bro, like, you don't need to be that way. I don't give a shit. Like, I understand that when you're online, the structure of online pairing, of finding a game and playing with somebody and having a good set and getting through the lag and all the issues, saltiness, it's tough. It's the structure of online gaming. That's part of it. It's baked into the cake. It's a shit cake and you got to eat it. So I don't really carry that forward. Even if I had a row with somebody online, I don't ever carry that forward when I meet them in person. I make sure that, it's all forgotten. But at the same time, I try to act good online. I try my best to be a good person.
Mhm.
And that's hard. The culture really tries to, there's a huge blowback when you try to be a good person or a community person online. The other day I got into it with some guy. I forgot his name. I want to remember his name, because he brought up some good points. I think you mentioned something earlier that was related to his points, which is the community has sprawled. It used to have a central location, which was Shoryuken.com in the early 2000s. And it's long since sprawled and dissipated somewhat into many multiple online locations, where you can find information, and because it's sprawled, the quality has gone down. I think that's just an online part of the World Wide Web's history, is that things, content saturation. And a lot of the content is bullshit, and you have to, as a person who's trying to obtain information at a consistent clip, good, actionable information, right? At a consistent clip, you have to sift through a lot of bullshit. It's like dumpster diving to go online, And especially since that's happened to the fighting game community, anyone who's been a part of the FGC since the early days, where it was very centralized and very concentrated, good information that was being exchanged. And I say that, take that with a grain of salt, because remember I said back in the Usenet days, people used to disinform, but there was a lot less of it. And since that's happened, since the fighting game community has sprawled, a lot of people just, anytime I say, hey man, that's not good for the community, I've said the word toxic a lot tonight. I try to avoid that word because I think that's a millennial buzzword too. But when I just put it in plain terms, that's not good for the community, I get a bunch of people jumping on my case. They go like, fuck the community. There's no such thing as a community. I said, people still play offline, and they're like, no, they don't. And I'm like, people play at my house, and they go, and then I say, look at my Twitch, and they go, oh, well, no, hardly anybody does that.
I like your impersonation, Joe, of your online antagonists.
Yeah, everyone sounds like Gilbert Gottfried from Aladdin. Yeah, exactly. And they
what community?
Exactly, and they break down as I start giving them the facts, and then they go like, well, still, the community doesn't exist anymore. They just don't want to get away from that point. And then I say, well, if people commune to play, that's the root of the word community, so it's happening. And then they go, well, it's always a good discussion when, I get people who are not naysayers, but people who are just in denial about the existence and importance of offline play versus online play. Again, that's part of the motto of Supercuts. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just haters, man. There's always gonna be haters in the world, man. Like it is.
I've lived through a lot in culture, pop culture, especially. The hip hop's golden age. All the way up to the mid 90s, like 93, 94, the late 80s to the mid 90s, and then going into the bling bling era. Puff Daddy, and Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, he was one of the dudes that really brought around the word hater, like in the late 90s. If you don't like me, you're hating. And, it was a way of saying, of replacing that you're jealous. And that's not true. A lot of times, when somebody naysays you or denies you, I can't say, hey, bro, you're just a hater. I can't dismiss them. Again, this is in furtherance of inclusivity. I'm trying to include them. I'm trying to break down those walls. So every time I get that, and I want to say, there's times where I get tired and I go, fuck, whatever. I dismiss it, right, in my head or in, my small cohort, the people that I know the closest, But still, when I go back and I go back active in exchanging with people, I make a point of it to say, you just don't understand. Here are more facts. I try to do that. I try to make as not gentle, but as humble of a presentation of the facts as possible. So because I want people to play fucking Street Fighter, offline, and it's hard, but it's possible,
but that's not what I'm talking about when I talk about hater, Joe. I'm talking about just people who just are just negative. Man, to me, that's the real definition of a hater. Just someone who just can't stop thinking negatively about everything. You know what I'm saying? That to me, that's the definition of hater. I don't see it as like a replacement of jealousy or anything. Maybe like in the basic level, it's jealousy, like kind of like almost like a subconscious state of jealousy where it's like, oh, look at him and he's got all that thing going on with him and I don't got anything going on with me. Like maybe that's But
Yeah.
but you know that there are some people, that just
Yeah.
are just they just can't quit being negative, man. You know that.
What I think about those people is your strongest enemies are going to be your strongest allies eventually.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
I've lived long enough in the FGC to see that happen.
mm-hmm,
There were people back in the day that I thought they were shitheads. I thought this guy's really fucking shitty.
mm-hmm.
Then I see him again today, and they're like, "Yo, you're still playing Street Fighter?" Like it, you know, and they just get real close. They bond real close. Time heals all wounds, So people, they try to come after me a lot. They try to be negative. They try to hate. You're right, but I always see them as eventually, they're gonna come around. That's what I try to think.
Eventually, they're gonna be in supercuts. That's
I didn't
all
even
right.
think that, but that's funny. Yeah, it's not Pollyanna either. I'm not like a uber optimist.
uh,
I've tried to be as realistic as possible. You
yeah.
know.
All right.
You know?
So we're gonna go ahead and take our second break here.
Cool, cool.
But when we come back, I wanted to get Joe Zaza's thoughts on 30th anniversary and the recent announcement of the Jazzy Circuit, a brand new Third Strike Gaming League coming to your venue near you, hopefully. And so we're going to go ahead and take a quick 2-minute break, and then we'll be back with more Mutant XPerience podcast with Joe Zaza. How's it going, guys? Mutant XP back on the mic with more Mutant XPerience podcasts with tonight's special guest, Joe Zaza, the man, the myth, the founder of Supercuts. How's it going, Joe?
Hey,
So,
man.
we just got done talking a little bit about Supercuts, and so I kind of wanted to switch gears and get your thoughts on a 30th anniversary. I've been asking all my guests this season what their thoughts on the port is. Obviously, Third Strike players have a long and arduous history with console
Ports.
console adaptations of Third Strike.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, what are your thoughts on the build and this version, and so forth and so on?
So I remember when I got out of the Air Force and I
Mhm.
played Online Edition, and I was like, "This is legit." and then I started hearing, nitpickings online, and then I was like, man, all those guys are nitpickers, right? Then I go to the arcade and I did a combo with 12 and it took off so little. And I was like, what happened? Where's my damage? And I realized that there was like a damage issue with online edition in that moment, And so I was like, oh God, like I felt cheated. Like I've been playing online edition underwater all this time, and then I go to the arcade and I'm like, okay, this is really a problem, right? So I know the issues that people have with ports. Also, I played Third Strike on Dreamcast back in the day too, and I know that's a pretty notorious port, you know. But when no,
Sorry,
no,
sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but
it's all good.
that's the thing though, right? Like obviously, it's like I don't know what it is, what happened, Joe, but like I was happy to at least have some version of Third Strike at home. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like when the Dreamcast one came out, right? Like I
hell
was
yeah.
glad that I had it. You
Yep.
know, and it's kind of like something I mentioned in other shows. Like it seemed like in our generation, when we knew there was going to be a console port,
Hmm.
we sort of already kind of assumed that it wasn't going to be 100% like the arcade. You know what I mean? Like that was never
Yes.
arcade
Yes.
fidelity was never an issue for us. Like it was
No.
just like, oh, you're gonna release it for Super Nintendo? Cool, we'll play that, knowing full well that for sure Super Nintendo, hyper finding is not the same way as arcade hyper finding, right?
Could not hold a candle, right?
Right. So, but we didn't complain. We didn't give a shit. We were just glad that when after we got home from the arcade, if we ran out of quarters, we could just go back home and play some semblance of Street Fighter, right?
Yeah.
Like I just feel like I don't know why that's like a thing now. I don't know. Anyway,
No,
sorry. This is
it's a good point that you're bringing up. The point that you're bringing up is basically we've gone from an age of flexibility in the FGC to a complete inflexibility when it comes to ports. And I was, again, I felt the lack of legitimacy when I did that 12 thing. It was actually X needle combo, SA1,
Mhm.
right? And it takes off a shit ton on online edition, But then you do it on offline or on a CPS3, and it takes a moderate amount off, And you're like, I was like, oh, like I have to work harder,
Yeah.
I realized because of the damage, So it did kind of like stop me, or give me pause, but still, I agree with you that
Because
I played it because I had it.
yeah, and another thing too, Joe. It was
Yeah.
almost like when you played, like, okay, obviously it comes out in arcade first, right? Right?
Yeah.
And then when the announcement hits, oh, Street Fighter 2 for Super Nintendo. Fuck, right? Like obviously the console sales are fueled by the arcade sales.
Yes.
Right? But
that's
you
our
also,
generation, right?
right, but you also have to think about the reverse, right? The people who buy it on console first. And they're
Yeah.
like, "Whoa, this is an arcade game, right?"
Yeah.
Then they're encouraged not to stay at home, but to go to the arcade,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
that's how it
That
felt
was
like when we
that
were.
was an aspect. That was a definite aspect of that time. And I'm glad you bring it up. You're somewhat of a journalist and a historian when it comes to the FGC, right? So it's good that you bring it up and make those points. And I try to make those points and emphasize those things, especially when we do our huddles here at Supercuts to the online era. But at the same time, perspective is important. A historical perspective is important. But one of the problems of bridging the gap of getting online players to come out and play offline is we have a really strong OG community which still exists, but they're really got an axe to grind with online era players, whatever derogatory term you want to call them, overemphasizing like their juniority, the opposite of seniority.
Juniority.
Yeah, you're a junior. You're never gonna be shit. Even if you beat me, you're still ain't shit. Like that is something that I've seen come across, It's not bridging the gap. They're firing rockets across the gap, and telling these kids, don't even try stepping to me,
Hmm.
you know. And you don't know shit because you weren't part of this part of history, that part of history, blah blah blah. And it gets overemphasized to them so much to the point that they kind of, as soon as you bring up a historical perspective, they kind of wince. They're like, yeah, like, and I'm careful. What I'm trying to say is I'm careful when I bring that up. I agree with you 100%. I lived through that era, and flexibility. Here's a good story about flexibility. Sometimes I'd play on machines that button was broken,
Yeah.
you know, and I'd try anyway. I'd try to jam that fucking start button, or two of the buttons were broken and I needed to beat M Bison anyway. You know, um, so I grew up in an age where flexibility wasn't a choice. You know, you had to be flexible. In other words, where inflexibility wasn't a choice. Nowadays, it's a choice. It's BYOS. Bring your own shit. Your stick, your D-pad, your keyboard. I got a dude on Supercuts, Young Haas, Sensual Haas. That's what I call him. He's on Fightcade as well, and he makes his way through the Twitch circuit for Third Strike as well. And he got one of those PCB boards wired up to his keyboard. He's a keyboard warrior. There's a couple of keyboard warriors on Fightcade who are really fucking good at Third Strike. There's Il Murray. There's Lasco from St. Paul, Minnesota. There's others I forgot, but there are a lot of people who are really decent, and they say, "Oh yeah, I use keyboard." I'm like, "Shit," we're in a different age, you know. So and they're inflexible. I mean, they're like, "Oh, can I come to Supercuts? Do you have a keyboard?" I'm like, "You got to be kidding me!" I'm as flexible as can be. But you're asking, I say, dude, wire your own shit. Bring your own keyboard with a USB port, plug it into my PS3 with a converter or whatever, and I'll let you play on that, But if you were trying to go to Boiler Room or Don's Arcade, they'd be like, get the fuck out of here with that shit. And I understand them completely too. But, it's a lot to take in. So when we're talking about anniversary, your question was about anniversary, and I really digress. But I think it's a decent port. I think the online community is already fucking dead. Like, I know that barely anybody's playing on PSN. Steam was really big when it first came out, and now everyone's saying that that's dead. People are kind of migrating slowly, or slowly trickling back into Fightcade, as far as I can see. And I want more people to play it. I think the opportunity to play it is still there, even though people are declaring it dead. And anyone who's saying that is obviously, I'm not going to say that they're full of shit, but because there's obviously some reason that they're saying that. It's taken a long time for them to get a match, and if that's the case, I don't think it has to do with the port. Honestly, I don't think it has to do with the port. I think the port's pretty decent. We've been spending all this time talking about being flexible, and here is actually a very good port. I know when it first came out, I think maybe they've released some patches, but when it first came out, training mode was really buggy. Like, I think I saw Action Hank trying to do 1, 2, 3, low 1, 2, 3 with Dudley, and 3 just wasn't hitting, like some shit like that. But only in training mode. When you went to versus mode, it would work. So it was like, it had some bugs and issues, but the game essentially worked. I don't think the port is the problem. I think it might be lack of good promotion and support by the community itself. You- you- oh yeah, yes, yes. No, I agree. I agree with that 100%. I remember when I got on it. Yeah, when I got on it, and I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" Especially I couldn't get into lobbies and stuff. And that, first impressions count, Capcom. And it probably negatively prescribed the experience of any of the people who bought it. A lot of people returned it, from what I understand too, and that's the worst. But what can we do to control that? So as far as the community is concerned, as a person who, I consider myself a member of the FGC, what can I do is try to promote it by trying to play it. We hosted Supercuts. I'm sorry. we had the PS4 console here at Supercuts. Some of our members here at Supercuts were digressing from Third Strike and scheduling and playing the other games. Like some guy here at Supercuts named Jordan, he wanted to do first to tens in Street Fighter One, and I accommodated him. I accommodated him because every single time we had a rotation of guys here to play Third Strike. Every time he rotated into the stream seat, he would switch the game. And he would somehow convince the other player, "Hey, let's play this," and they'd be like, "Man, fuck you!" And then there you go, you got that clip, right? And I was like, "What the hell is going on? You got other guys waiting in the rotation, and you guys are beginning a first two in Street Fighter One." I remember I was bemoaning this to Mike Watts at Super Arcade, and he's like, "It's a good game, bro." I was like, "No, it isn't." But yeah, these guys got into it. They were playing Street Fighter One, so it was kind of hard. Again, user interface. Like it's really easy for my guys who jump on the stream while we're not watching. We look away for a sec, we fucking blink, and these guys are jumping onto hyper fighting or something. Hyper fighting's decent, but Street Fighter One, I was like, oh god, what are you guys doing? So that's another part of it. As a person who hosts offline meet and trying to feature something on a stream, you got this. A kid will sit down here and he's like a kid in a candy store. Jordan's born in '96, so I call him kid, but it's affectionate. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah. 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 I'm not like a crackhead for head count, to be honest. A head count crackhead, right? But I have a group that all came from Chino, California, and we call them Los Chinos.
Uh-huh.
And they were all born in the late '90s,
Yeah.
and they like Dragon Ball Fighter Z. They
Uh-huh.
like Smash.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, come on, please, at least play Melee.
Uh-huh.
They were playing four, and fours. We had a tournament with 2 stocks only, and that shit took forever to complete. It was like, oh god, it's like CVS2, the
Yeah.
Street Fighter equivalent, analogy. But I had to, they held up my head count for a good portion of season 2, and they asked for it, and they were willing to schedule it. That's another thing, because I remember in the last stream, you're like, "That's something we got to talk about, Joe.
Yeah.
You're not repping Third Strike enough." You were like wagging the finger at me, and I was like, "You're right. You're right." And to explain that, again, these guys come, oh, and they were willing to, as I started I'm trying to move some kind of little reveal for plans ahead of time in Supercuts. Is I'm trying to get a double CRT head-to-head setup
Mhm.
that we're bringing together that has a compatibility to switch different devices to direct feed into the stream. So what I
Okay.
want to do is I want to host Dreamcast, so legit Marvel 2, legit CVS 2, and a
Wow.
Super Gun, legit Third Strike, and be able to switch pretty freely between those during the course of our stream
Mhm.
at night, and to host legit competition. And so far, the atmosphere of Supercuts has been casual, and I'm trying to move it out of a casual atmosphere into kind of a scheduled atmosphere. So please show up on time. And I know that's a lot to ask of people. I know how far out on a limb we are just to get people to play offline, period. But then to ask them to be there on time, I know it's kind of a stretch. I always thank everyone who comes during the huddle. Thank you guys for coming out,
Mhm.
because I know in the online era, it's really a nag or difficult to come on play offline, so you know uh thanking them for that, but then going ahead and trying to move them from a value, the values in our current culture, the atmosphere of casual play, into an atmosphere of competitive play and scheduled play. It's something that I'm trying to roll the ball over, like kind of slowly and surely, like do it in a sure-footed way. So Los Chinos, being some of our strongest supporters, they come and they boost the head count by like 8 sometimes. Um, they wanted to do Smash. And they still want to do a Dragon Ball Fighter Z tournament. And I already told them no more Smash 4, please. because the last tournament it just ran on. I think it started at 11 and it ended at 3 in the morning. You know?
Oh shit.
Yeah. So I want to move to having scheduled events, and they were the only ones who were willing to go through the motions of promotion and scheduling.
Mm-hmm.
And because they did that, I said, yeah, let's do some other stuff. Let's do whatever you guys want to do. Because my Third Strike players, the guys who do come here for Third Strike, they ain't scheduling shit. And I'm the venue provider, and I could be dual-hatted or triple-hatted because there's venue provider, there's organizer, and there's player, So I could be triple-hatted and try to organize myself. But, and back when we were offline, before we did the streams, I had 6 Third Strike tournaments here at Supercuts, and we filled 16-man brackets.
Wow.
Maybe if not filled, like maybe we had a couple of buys, but we were able to have 2 8-man double elimination tournament, 6 times. And I want to do Supercuts number 7. That's like the horizon for us, right? But I haven't scheduled Supercuts 7 because I'm, as a host, now kind of inundated with again, the needs of my guests, and at the same time supervising the stream. I'm not always sitting down here on the stream rig. I'm not always sitting down occupying the commentator chair. And that's another thing. I want people to rotate in and out of the commentator chair, just like I was trying to decentralize control of those huddles. I'm trying to decentralize, my appearance on Supercuts. I don't want to become an online personality. I don't believe in online persona. Again, authenticity over personality. I'm trying to be an authentic person is really hard. Especially when you're on camera, you're larger than life automatically. And trying to calm people down. Calm your tits. I'm not who you think I am. I try to somehow communicate that through the screen, through the broadcast, and I want people here at Supercuts to rotate into the commentator chair. And part of what I'm doing during Supercuts Saturday is trying to coax my guests, like, hey man, sit on the commentator chair. You guys are talking about some funny shit. Get on there and talk about funny shit on there. Even if they're talking about the last movie that came out last Friday, I want them to talk about it. I want them to have a go at projecting themselves out there and understanding, what the results or consequences are of that, So that's all part and parcel with, why I've kind of de-emphasized Third Strike. I don't mean to de-emphasize Third Strike. Third Strike is the backbone of our activity. I always say that. There's no other game that could hold up this activity, in my opinion. There are other games that are good. Talk to the old homie APOC, Danny Leong, also from Las Vegas. Shout out to him. They all played the old games. Like, they love the Alpha series. They love the 2 series. And props to them for the skill. The skill level that they have is just amazing in those games, and they're good fucking games. But those games aren't going to hold up today as far as this activity is concerned. I think Third Strike is really, again, as I tried to bridge the gap between the online and the offline era, I think that the perfect game to bridge that gap is Third Strike. So anniversary, we have a jailbroken PS3. I know you told me, hey Joe, don't get yourself in trouble. We got a jailbroken PS3 that we have never updated. We never plug it into an Ethernet line, and it has Final Burn Alpha on it. And we can play Final Burn Alpha plugging in sticks into a PS3. We're thinking about going with that in the meantime that we don't have this super gun. We're thinking about that because I'm waiting for the super gun. It hasn't happened yet. When it does ultimately come, hallelujah, everything will be good on that day. But until then, I think probably the best option, because again, if we plug in the PS4, all of a sudden it's going to be, hey, let's play Street Fighter Champion Edition, World Warrior, even worse, or Street Fighter 1, So as far as featuring anniversary collection on the stream, that's going to be a pass for me now. I'm willing to do online edition sometimes too, because that's the best compromise that we can do. But now that we have this Final Burn Alpha on our PS3, I'm thinking that that's probably what we're gonna try and standardize for now, until we get that super gun. You know, I agree with you about the UI. You know,
Yeah. 30th needs a little bit of work. You know what else needs a little work, Joe? Some of the people who play online. And so yes, that was my ill-fated segue.
You know, Vitriolic said Mutant is muted. Did you catch that?
Yeah, no, they can hear me now.
Okay, cool.
So
people who play online, you
yeah,
said.
so I don't know how familiar you are with this next segment, Joe Zaza, but this is a segment that we like to call Pack It Up. And what I do is every week I scour the interweb for some of the more unique examples of Third Strike gameplay. I choose 5 nominees, and I let my viewers pick who they think should win this week's award for Pack It Up. And so, awesome. I think obviously, this is a very trolly thing to do, but over the last year or so, I've noticed a upward tick in the quality of Third Strike gameplay online, Joe, and I can't attribute it to anything else, it seems, but to Pack It Up, because no one wants to be on this highlight reel. You don't want to be on this. You don't want to be on Pack It Up. And so people are the butt cheeks are tight. They don't fuck up their shit, and then they don't get on Pack It Up. So there's always that chance, and I feel like
somebody shows up on Pack It Up.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm doing the Third Strike scene a service, obviously. And I invite you, Joe, to invite these players to Supercuts if they live nearby, dude. Who knows? Maybe they do. So without further ado, guys, here's this week's edition of Pack It Up. All right, I already forgot some of these clips. It was like 2 weeks ago. Okay. So, nominee number 1. I think this Ken player kind of confused combos here. Clearly thinking that Shinyuken was going to OTG Urian, but wow.
That's not good.
That clearly wasn't the case.
Not good, bro.
No. Nominee number 2. What could Alex be doing? Obviously, the Goki player has obviously forgotten about SA3, and so
yeah, the old jump back and fireball
from downtown.
Yep. Good shit, Alex.
All right, nominee number 3. Or was that nominee? No, nominee number 3. Yeah, that's right. Nominee number 3. Oh man. Oh. Joe Zaza!
Yeah. Jump kicks and sweeps, homie. That's how you learn how to play.
Sweep the leg!
Jump kicks and sweeps.
These legs are getting blessed!
Yeah. You don't know how to play. Jump kicks and sweeps.
Oh my goodness. Alright, nominee number 4. This is a pretty good one. That's so I just
wow.
I can't even explain
pretty dope.
What happens here.
Whoa. Excuse me?
Yeah, Exactly. So this Makoto player,
grab.
Yeah, like if you connected the parts, then it'll be good. They're called combos.
Dude, he had like real life lag.
Yeah,
real life
lag. All right, nominee number 5.
Please tell me this is a comeback.
Third time's the charm here, as this Dudley player finally is able to kill the Ibuki.
Dude, that was like a Marvel flurry of roses. Like, how many projectiles are on screen? You can't keep up with it.
So, guys, pick your favorite 1 through 5. Let me know which you guys think should win this week's Pack It Up. What do you think, Joe? Which one was your favorite here?
I like the sweep one, dude.
Yeah, the sweep was pretty funny.
That's the old okey doke.
Yeah. Dude,
triple sweep fake out.
Those quadruple sweeps. You know, 4 of them.
Yeah.
Jesus.
That's like one of those memes where they show the guys and the mind gets progressively more expanded.
Yeah.
4 sweeps in a row.
Dude, that shit, that shit only works on like the worst match and the greatest match, right? Like if it was like fucking MOV versus Rikamaru, that shit would have been sick, right?
Those are
If
outliers on the
that,
skill curve.
right? If that was fucking like match
Either
versus
super scrubby or
Deshikin,
super elite.
yeah, right. Like if that was match versus Deshikin, we saw that shit, we'd be like, oh, that's sick, right?
Yeah. We were like,
Oh,
how do you know?
Yeah, right? Oh my god. Fucking third strike. Alright. So tell me a little bit about, what you see the future of Supercuts, man. Because, obviously you've been getting all these people together, these offline events, giving these kids, and quite frankly, they're kids, right? Giving these kids, something to do on a Saturday night. Super, super awesome. And at the same time, obviously exposing more and more people to Third Strike. So,
Yep.
like, what's next? What are some of the things that you're looking to do, or some of the things we should expect from you guys?
Slow expansion, basically what it looks like we're becoming. And when I say that, I put out for the huddles, hey, past, present, and future. That's the agenda of my huddles. This is what we've done. This is where we're at, and this is where in the near future we hope to be.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as the long view is concerned, I normally don't think about that. But as far as trends are concerned here, what I'm seeing is that we're becoming like a real world for Street Fighter, like the real world, the first reality show. Like you enter this house, it's almost like fucking Jersey Shore of Street Fighter. Like there's a camera everywhere.
Yeah, the cameras are on, and then that's it. And
the cameras are on, and whoever walks through here is going to be broadcasted.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that some of the fellas that walk through here, at first, especially when the stream began, they were a little uncomfortable being on camera, and it took a couple of huddles for me to convince them that I'm doing it only in the best vein. My whole purpose of streaming these players is to give them an easy platform, in these days of sponsorships and esports, where you have to be a part of qualifiers in order to get your story told. No, like I'm in denial of that. I mean, I'm not saying I'm in denial of that like it doesn't exist. It exists. It's just fucked up. I'm sorry that it's hard. It's difficult for me to subscribe to, And so I always tell them the goal here is to feature you guys. Again, decentralize. There's a community that exists, I have been compared recently, and I didn't know about this thing at all, to a Twitch channel called Team Spooky. Recently, somebody told me, hey, we're like Team Spooky. And I was like, what? What is that? And then I watched it and I was like, oh, yo, that's dope, and I didn't know it existed. I didn't know anything, was happening like in tandem. Maybe they've been around a lot longer than I have, so, but the intent was never to go in that direction, to copy that, or I don't even know. I think they're more competitive. I think they schedule things more than we do. They actually schedule and broadcast events. And from what I hear, the guy who hosts that is a pretty cool dude. So, if we could get to that level, that would be awesome. And I think that's kind of like where we're going. But at the same time, we're a little loose, we're a little loose over here. You asked me earlier what kind of happens through the week as we prepare for Supercuts. And I wanted to compare it to, I remember back in the day on MTV, a long time ago, I saw a segment about how the Beastie Boys created an album. And they had like this loft where they had a half pipe and a bunch of arcade games. It basically looked like where the Foot Clan chilled back in the 1990s.
Yeah, right? In that Turtles movie.
Yeah, exactly. It looked like where the Foot Clan chilled. And they just drew and they would smoke and play whatever and record whatever whenever they felt like it. It was like some kind of like artisan loft kind of thing. That's kind of like what we are here at my house.
Supercuts, the Third Strike Artisan Lounge.
Yeah, basically. I
guess like it.
Yeah. People come over here off schedule, not on Supercut Saturday. They come over here and they ask me questions about the game. I try to mentor them as much as I can about the game. I tell them here's a Japanese player, here's a great North American player, European player you want to look out for as far as that's concerned. I give them examples, or I talk meta. It's something that the FGC sorely lacks. Most FGC people who teach, instruct, talk about the game, they usually focus on execution, and execution is important. I used to dismiss execution. I used to be like, it's going to come when it's going to come. But as I focused on meta more than execution, I consider meta to be game dynamics versus game mechanics. Game mechanics to me is more execution, but dynamics involves the fluidity between you and the opponent and decision making, spacing, and timing as well, So when I focus on game dynamics, and I have a vocabulary for that, I literally, that was my profession in the Air Force, was being a linguist. Foreign language or native language, all the principles that I applied to learn the grammar of a foreign language, applying it to my native language, and you're in English, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, from coming from a literary perspective, I know you appreciate that too, like coining terms, really difficult in the FGC. A lot of the shit that I say doesn't take, people won't uptake. They kind of resist it. I've been writing in the FGC since '98, since those Usenet groups, and exchanging information with top players, OGs, way from back then. And, but who the hell am I now? I'm somebody who fell off, who was gone for 6 years. Nobody remembers me. I don't really care about clout or trying to communicate, get that point across. Hey, you should listen to me because, I just try to submit things, and there's a lot of resistance, So as people come off schedule and I try to, give them food for thought, sometimes, they just don't want to talk about that. They come and they want to play a few games, or we sit and we watch fucking YouTube clips or Twitch clips, or they talk about their life. They want to just tell me who they are, as players. Everyone's got a story. It should be heard both interpersonally, and I try to help to broadcast that. So that goes more in furtherance of what you were asking, your question, what direction of where we're going. It's kind of a loose thing,
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, obviously, one of the reasons I asked you to come on here is because, I truly admire what you're doing, Joe. I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass, but, just, I always admire people who are able to do the things that I'm not willing to do. You know what I mean? And the fact that you're able to open up your house, and your life to these players, I think it's a commendable thing. So.
I appreciate it, man. Don from Don's Arcade recently talked to one of my guys and told him the same thing. It's like Joe Zaza. He said,
yeah, Don's another guy too, man.
Yeah. Don said, I consider him a contemporary in this effort, right?
Yeah.
To host Street Fighter activity, and he said, Joe Zaza, I heard he runs like a boot camp for Third Strike at his house. I was like, that's cool. I like that. I like that reputation. But at the same time, he said this guy teaches and nobody wants to teach, and I'm like, yeah, that's definitely. And I don't take it upon myself like I'm the only one who could teach. No. Shotokan, shouts out to that guy. That guy tries his best to talk to people in the Fightcade chat. I also see J Star Lee. I think he's from SoCal too. There's a lot of people who try to help people out. And then the resistance, the blowback from the target, of whatever, whoever you're trying to inform, the blowback you get from that, and then the blowback from people, that just jump on your case, the other outside people in the chat, they'll just jump, no, that's not true, blah, 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 naysayers. And it's like, you can't teach in public. Most of the time when I try to teach people on Fightcade, I try to keep the conversation within Final Burn Alpha, within the emulator. And, they want to ask me, sometimes they go out of the game, they leave the game, they say good games, and they leave before I get a chance to talk to them. And then we're in the public chat and they go, got any tips, any pointers in public? And I'm like, bro, next time before you leave, ask me in private. Because I know how thorny it gets for you to say anything in public, and how everyone is going to just, throw not just their 2 cents in, but all their garbage too, Yeah, so I know it's difficult. It's possible though, and I want everybody else. I wanted to say that. I wanted to say that because I think anybody else who has the inspiration to mentor, come from a place of humility, it usually works. And value every single player that you come across, because there is such thing as a community. No matter how many people deny it, no matter how many people say, I'm a lurker or I'm a sad boy in my house playing in my chonies with Cheeto dust on my fingers, whatever, uh, uh, there's still a community out there. I'm still trying to provide a venue. Mike Watts is trying to provide a venue with Super Arcade. The Boiler Room invites people. Dawn's Arcade invites people. There's a lot of venues still out there, even though you might think it's only a handful. There's a lot of OGs, new school players who try to host, organize, teach. So there's opportunity there.
Mm. Well, I'm excited to hear that because, hopefully, activity is going to increase in general, thanks to the recent launch of the Jazzy circuit. And
Good
so,
segue.
for those of you who didn't catch the news this past weekend, myself and a group of other Third Strike players have launched a Third Strike League, Third Strike Gaming League. It's called the Jazzy Circuit. We're up on smash.gg/the Jazzy Circuit. We had to add the Joe because someone already had a Twitter handle, Jazzy Circuit, and it's so random. It was like a female Japanese female jazz musician.
Oh wow,
it's crazy or something, But,
she was like the lead singer for the Seatbelts, the Cowboy Bebop music.
Maybe
I don't know.
But I just wanted to take some time out real quick to thank everyone who supported the circuit since the announcement. A lot of buzz on Twitter, a lot of buzz on social media, and it all just kind of.
I've seen it everywhere.
Yeah,
I've seen it everywhere, shared by all kinds of people, not just you.
And we even made the front page on SRK. I think sometime last night. So I want to thank all you Third Strike players, all you Third Strike fans for helping out the Jazzy Circuit. Hopefully the Jazzy Circuit.
We were talking about it. We were talking about it here at Supercuts. A few of the homies, they were telling me like, hey, did you see this? I'm like, yeah, I saw that. Yeah. And they go, are we going to send somebody? And I'm like, I want to try. I want to try to send a Supercuts player to that.
Yeah. So for those of you who are curious about how to join the Jazzy Circuit, basically it's very much like the Burst League or the Marvel Circuit, the Curly Circuit. Basically if you're a tournament organizer and you're running a Third Strike event and you want your event to be part of the circuit, which means you would earn points towards earning a spot in a special tournament sometime next July. And so basically if you're a TO and you're running a Third Strike event and you want to be part of the circuit, you want your event to earn your players points, then all you do is just create your tournament through Smash GG, and then just put in a note that you want to join the Jazzy Circuit. So once again, guys, the link is smash.gg/the Jazzy Circuit. Definitely check it out if you're interested. If you're a player and you want to maybe start having a regular Third Strike event, and you feel like you need something to kind of pitch, your venue provider or, maybe whoever's running it, and, then let them say, hey, I'm a Third Strike player. I think maybe, I'd like to try to start getting Third Strike events here. Will you let me try? That's just kind of how it happens, right, Joe? It's just kind of how it develops.
Promote, circulate.
Yeah,
exactly.
Definitely.
That's what a circuit means.
Yeah. So, all right, guys. Well, before we get out of here, I just wanted to go ahead and give a shout outs to a few people here. So once again, guys, please visit smash.gg/the Jazzy Circuit for more information on how you can be part of this 3S Gaming League. Definitely check us out on Twitter as well at the Jazzy Circuit. Shout outs to Vankabot. I think he's currently streaming now. He's a multi-game streamer. Awesome part of the 3S community. Also helps out with the circuit, so definitely check him out. Shout out to the Boiler Room, Kaz and Ricardo holding it down for Third Strike out in SoCal. They broadcast on Mondays and Saturdays, sometimes other days. So definitely follow them. And they got a huge archive of sick Third Strike footage on their YouTube as well. Shout outs to Arcadium, Surge from Monday Night Fightcade. This stream is Trollcoin enabled, and so feel free to tip myself or anyone else. Anyone else, Trollcoins.
AC Slayer Hero.
Big props to Herove for holding it down. Third Strike Fightcade. I know he was on 30th for a little bit, but Fightcade, I guess, is his true home.
They're trickling back in there.
Yeah. So Lost Ark Video Games hosts Sato Saturdays. Third Strike get-togethers over in the Lost Ark arcade over in Raleigh, North Carolina. Violent City, shout-outs to my UK Third Strike players. I think the next Gutter Trash is going to be in October, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
Sick. And
last but not least, Scrub Series. Third Strike Wisconsin group. They run casuals every Sunday, twitch.tv/Scrub Series.
Wisconsin, huh?
Yeah, man, there's Third Strike everywhere, dude. Third Strike everywhere. It's exciting.
It's exciting. Not just cheese, man.
No. In terms of events that are coming up, I need to change the slide, but so basically, something that I was trying to get started, Joe, because I felt like, before I started the circuit, I was like, I'm gonna need something to do that's not Third Strike related, and I was like, I'm gonna do a hyper fighting stream, and it's just it's just fizzled, man. I don't know.
I remember you. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, we'll figure out what to do about that stream. Anyway, this Saturday, it's gonna be a Tekken tournament over at iFix Machine, so definitely go. August 25th, proud to announce the very first Third Strike tournament officially sanctioned by the Jazzy Circuit will be at the Paradigm Grand Prix 2018 in Wisconsin, hosted by the Scrub Series guys that we just mentioned earlier. Next month, September 8th, 2018, is going to be the Dusty Knuckle Saloon version 4 over at iFix Machine. That's DJ Beats' attempt to he does what the Mikado does. He runs tournaments for random fighting games. It's pretty sick. And so, interestingly enough, Joe Zaza, at the next Dusty Knuckle Saloon, the games that he's going to run include Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and...
Did you say DJ Beast?
DJ Beast. DJ Beast.
Oh, DJ Beast.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And so, one of the games that we're going to run is Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
Marvel 2.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's going to be pretty sick.
Right.
So, yeah, guys. Wow. That was a mouthful there. I didn't... Anyway,
don't trip. You got it.
So once again, Joe, thanks for coming on. My apologies for last Friday.
Most definitely. Don't worry about that, man. Don't worry.
But I'm glad that we had a little extra time on this relaxing Wednesday night. And again, for those of you who haven't already, please follow this man on Twitter at Supercuts. Just replace the E with the 3. And I'm like, how the hell did you get that Twitter handle, right? Right? That must have been anyway.
Serendipity,
dude. Serendipity. It's just the E backwards, man. Also, that's the same as their Twitch channel as well. So definitely follow them on Twitch. They're going to have another broadcast this Saturday. I'll be there. Make sure you're there. And so obviously Joe's going to be there.
I'll be there.
All right. So is there anything you wanted to say before we get out of here, Joe?
Thanks for everyone who came to watch. Like I said, I was hoping I'd see more of my Supercuts homies. A lot of them are out playing tonight. Different spots, and
well, they can always check out the YouTube. They can always check out the YouTube archive.
Yeah, let's see the YouTube VODs or whatever. And I always want everyone to try and keep me honest. Again, authenticity over personality. I'd rather not be a persona. So I appreciate the platform, dude. I want you to know. Thank you for giving me the chance to talk about what we do, and thanks to you for doing what you do.
All right, man. Well, thank you. So we're going to go ahead and get out of here. But once again, guys, thanks for tuning in to the Mutant XPerience podcast. We'll see you later.
Peace out.